Hello everyone, I'm Thomas and welcome to my channel where I educate people on IoT and web development by showing how to build projects step by step. Today, you're gonna learn how to create and deploy an AWS Lambda function and how to put it behind AWS API Gateway HTTP endpoint. All of this is gonna be simple and easy thanks to the serverless framework that I'm planning to use. Before we get started, please make sure you subscribe to my channel so there will be more content like this in the future. And now, let me show you how to deploy that function. Okay, right, so here is my browser opened. I've got two tabs in here. The first tab is aws.amazon.com. I'm gonna go back to this in a few seconds. The second one is the blog post on how to create AWS Lambda function, how to create and deploy it using serverless framework, the subject of this video. The reason I opened this blog post is basically because we've got a few requirements that you have to meet in order to do all of these operations. And these requirements are: you need AWS account, AWS admin IAM user, AWS CLI installed and configured on your machine, and finally, latest Node.js also installed on your local machine. Okay, and most of these steps I am going to cover on this video, and that is gonna be creation of AWS admin IAM user, installing and configuring AWS CLI, and just a quick one on the Node.js. However, AWS account is something that I'm not really gonna cover. I'm gonna assume that you've already have it created. But if you don't worry, have a look at the description of the video. You will find these two links in there. The first one is AWS official article on how to do it. Just tutorial how to create an account. Pretty straightforward. You just need to provide your details, your debit or credit card information, and this is really it. Don't worry about the card, the credit card, because they're not really gonna charge you. You will have access to most of AWS products for free for 1 year. But yeah, you can find everything in this article. In case you have some issues with creating the account from that article, you can have a look at the second URL that points to official video, YouTube video on how to create an account. That's also from AWS, from the official channel. So they will take you step by step how to do it. Okay. So yeah, as I said, I'm gonna assume you have this done already, right? And the rest of the steps I'm gonna cover on this video, and that's something I'm gonna do just now, right? So we're going to go back to aws.amazon.com. and I'm gonna go to my account, AWS Management Console, and from here, first of all, I'm gonna log in as a root user, right? So that's gonna be the user that you've created during registration process, okay? So I've got my email provided here. That's something you need to do as well. Then click on next. You need to solve the CAPTCHA. Click on submit. Click on submit. Then you need to provide your password. Sign in. And there we go. AWS Management Console. I'm logged in with the root email account. And what I would like to do just now is to type in IAM in the search box. Click on IAM. This is to create our admin IAM user. Then, menu on the left, we want to click on users. And then add user button. The username in the form here should be something like administrator or admin, but it's entirely up to you. Then access type you would like to check programmatic access and also AWS Management Console access. For the console password, we would like to pick a custom password. And because I've just, checked that option, I'm gonna have to provide it right now. And that's what I'm gonna do. It is quite important to remember that password because you're gonna have to use it to log into AWS Management Console, this dashboard, as an IAM user, right? So remember this password. Require password reset. We want to uncheck this and then click on next permissions, right? In the next view, you probably won't see anything, no groups, just create group button. That's the one you want to click on. For the group name, you want to put something like admins or administrators. And from the policies, there is only one policy that you need to check, which is administrator access, right? So just click on the checkbox and then create group button. Right, that's gonna auto check it here in this view, right? In the add user to group view. So the only thing that you can do right now is to click on next tags. There is no tags to be added. So next review and then create user. That's going to create a new user, right? And here is the success screen, right? From this screen, there are a few very important values. The first one is that URL, right? Note it down, save it somewhere because you're gonna need to access AWS console, right? This dashboard with IAM admin user credentials. There is gonna be a user admin, right? In my case, if you call the user something else should be here. So that's gonna be your username. And password is gonna be the password that you provided in a custom password field. So that's one thing to note down and save. The second thing to note down and save is access key ID and secret access key. These are needed for AWS CLI, for the serverless framework to be able to talk to AWS, to deploy the code to AWS. And the easiest way is to just download CSV file. It's gonna contain all the credentials that you're gonna need in the AWS CLI configure process. However, if you don't want to download it, you can just copy access key ID and then click on show in here and just copy secret access key. But yeah, make sure you do it right now because you won't see this screen anymore. And you won't be able to access this data from the console anymore either, right? The reason is because of security. But yeah, don't worry, you can regenerate them. But still, it's a good idea to download it as a CSV. Anyway, I've just done it, so I'm just gonna close it. And then I'm gonna sign out from Management Console because I'm not gonna be using it today anymore. That is because serverless framework just uses programmatic access, okay? Cool, okay, so that's done. Now the next step, right? So that is covered. AWS CLI. So AWS CLI, I'm just gonna type in Google AWS CLI install and then click on the first link, which is installing, updating, and uninstalling the AWS CLI. Cool, okay. And what we would like to click on is AWS CLI version 2. This is the one that we want to install. And now we have a choice, right? We've got Docker, Linux, Mac OS, or Windows. And this really depends on your operating system, right? If you work on Mac, like me, you want to click on Mac OS. I'm gonna cover the others, don't worry. And what you want to click on is install and update the AWS CLI version 2 using the Mac OS user interface, right? That's the simplest way you can do. And what you're gonna need to do is to just click on that link, download the package file, double click on it, and go through the installation process. Not something I'm gonna do here on this video because it's pretty straightforward. It's just, about clicking next, agree, and that's it, right? So just download it and double click. And actually, for Windows, this is very similar because it's also about downloading MSC file this time, double clicking, going through installation process. For Linux, you have to make sure you have a zip installed and curl, right? So curl and zip are two requirements, and this is what you need to type in your console. You can essentially use the copy button in here and then just paste it in your terminal on Linux to install AWS console. Cool. Okay. So yeah. So now I'm assuming you've done that. The setup was successful, and what you can do right now is to confirm it with terminal or Windows command line. Right, I'm gonna show you how to do it on Mac, but on Windows it's pretty similar, right? So I'm gonna open my terminal. Okay, make sure it's a new window. It is important. And what you want to type here is AWS -- version, right? If you work on Windows, use the keyboard Windows +R buttons and then type in CMD, enter. You should see something similar, and then try to type AWS space -- version. If you get something similar to what I've got, that means that AWS CLI has been installed successfully on your computer, right? Like in my case, right? But yeah, I've got it already installed. Cool, okay. So we've got this installed, but now we have to configure it. To configure it, you just need to type in AWS configure, and this is the moment where you need AWS access key ID and the secret key, right? I've got them downloaded as a CSV file, and yeah, there are two ways you can open it. If you have Excel, just open it with Excel. It's gonna be easier because you will see columns, or you can just do it with the text edit, like I'm just gonna do. And here what we can see is the columns, comma separated columns, and then the values, right? They're gonna be different to you. I've just put X's everywhere. This is for the security reasons, because these credentials you are not supposed to share with anyone. Remember that. Otherwise, someone can, for example, use these credentials to create a Bitcoin mining infrastructure on AWS, and then you will be charged a lot of money. So yeah, don't share it with anyone. Cool, okay, what we're going to do now is to locate access key ID, okay? So by just looking at the columns here, the first one is username, that's admin. Then we have password, in this case it's empty, that's why there is a comma and another comma here. And then there is an access key ID. This is the one that starts with A, and that's something that we want to copy and paste here. Okay, I just did a Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V. And then for the secret access key is right next after the access key ID. So it's gonna be the second value. It should have like lower, uppercase, and numbers. So I'm gonna paste it in and then press enter. And now we've got the default region name. For me, this is EU West 1 because I'm based in Europe. However, if you are based somewhere else, like in US, you probably want to have a different value in here. Have a look at the description of the video. There is a link to all regions that AWS provides. You can pick the one that is closest to your location or the location of your clients or customers, right? Essentially the consumers of your API, right? Because EU West 1 is the one I would like to use, I don't need to provide here anything. I can just press enter, and the default output format, I'm just gonna keep it as none. So I'm gonna press enter again. And that's it. Your AWS CLI is now configured and it should work. To make sure the CLI is configured properly, you can just quickly type in AWS S3LS. And if you don't see any errors, right, it's probably gonna be empty list or something like that, or just nothing. But if you don't see any errors, that means everything went successful. Cool. Okay, so another step is done. Let me just go back to the list of requirements. So yeah, we've got this covered as well as this one. And the last one is Node.js, okay? So for the Node.js, you just need to follow the link, another link from the description of the video. And here, this is gonna take you to the official Node.js page. And you just want to pick one of the versions, it can be either of those, and just download the either package file or MSI file, or for Linux there are gonna be instructions, and just follow all the installation steps to have your node installed, right? This is important to be able to install serverless framework with NPM. Cool, okay, so yeah, I'm assuming you've done this. And now the next step, which is the last requirement, not on that list because the next step was how to install serverless globally. And that's something we're gonna do just now, right? So I'm gonna minimize this window, and in here, I'm just going to type npm install -g serverless. Okay, when I press enter, that's gonna install serverless globally as a node module. And yeah, this is gonna be essentially it for the prerequisites, okay? In case you have issues with that, you may get you may see an error, a permission error. Just add a sudo in front of npm, right? So before npm, just add sudo space npm install -g serverless, and that is gonna that should actually fix the permission issue. Okay, installed. Right, so now that I've got that done, I'm gonna have to restart my terminal again, right? There is a new command, serverless, that I can use, but not in this window probably. So ideally, that's also what you would like to do. So you just want to close the terminal and open it again, okay? And that's what I've done. Just to make sure the serverless is there, I think we can do just serverless -- version, and that should give us some information. Yes, so that means the command is there, the installation was successful, right? If it's something wrong, that means you probably had an error with the installation of the serverless, which most likely was the permission error. So you probably want to run a sudo npm install -g serverless. But yeah, okay, it's all working here. And now I'm going to go to my directory where I keep all of my projects, all of my programming projects I've got in the projects directory, which is actually in my home directory as well. So it's home directory /projects. It's the same one, right? So I went there, and now I'm gonna create a new serverless framework project using serverless commands. And this is important to not create the folder yourself, right? This is gonna create the folder with the project. That's what I mean, right? So that creates the project, the folder for you. Don't create it on your own. So to do that, we're gonna type serverless create -- template AWS Node.js, then path. And here you can give the name to your project. I'm gonna call it my lambda function. That's also gonna be the name of the folder this command is going to create. And template is essentially the serverless template for AWS Node.js project. So there's gonna be some example files, a serverless YAML, and there's gonna be a handler.js as well. Okay. So that's what happened just now. We've got that project created. If I do cd my lambda function, right, and do ls, you see I've got handler.js and serverless YAML. But yeah, it's not going to be really convenient to edit these files from my command line. So I'm going to use Visual Studio Code to open that folder. So yeah, let me just maximize the window, and I'm gonna go to open, projects, and there should be my Lambda function over here, right? So I'm gonna open the whole folder, right? And there we go. So let me just quickly go through it. There is not many files in this folder. We've got npm ignore. This is to ignore node modules, which is not here, that is not existing here, and we're not gonna create it today because our code is gonna be super simple. We're just gonna keep what it is in handler.js with a small modification. But we're gonna start configuring our Lambda from the serverless YAML file, okay? So yeah, what is the serverless YAML file? So this is where you keep all the infrastructure configuration about AWS services that your Lambda needs to use, right? So things like API gateway, things like authorizers, things like permissions to other AWS resources, right? Things like, permissions to S3, permissions to DynamoDB, and other AWS projects are all here in this single serverless.yaml file, right? Yeah, let me just quickly go through it. So what we've got first is the service name, right, which is my Lambda function, exactly same name I gave at the beginning, like when I created it with the command. Then we have a framework version. We're not gonna change that. A provider, which is AWS. A runtime is Node.js 12.x, and there is also a Lambda hashing version here. This is probably also something has to do with the runtime version. And a bunch of code that is commented out. This one is about the stage and region. Region here is quite important to us, especially to me, because I'm not based in US East, but Europe, EU West 1. Again, I refer you to the region list, link in the description of the video. So what I've just done is uncommented the region. Just make sure this one is at the same level as other properties of the provider. And I'm gonna change US East 1, which is a default value. So if you want to, you are based close to the US East 1, you just want to keep it as it is. I mean, comment it out, right? I uncommented it because I want to change this to EU West 1, right? So that's the region I am in, right? Closest in. It's also the cheaper one in my area, right? The next commented out code is about the roles. We don't care about the roles today. It's gonna be another video about those. Environment variables, again, another video, another day. Package, I'm just gonna remove. And here we are, the functions. Here are the functions definition. What is in at the moment, what is in here at the moment is the hello function with the handler.hello, right? Hello is the name of the function. If you want to change it, you can do it. That's just gonna be the name of your Lambda function that is gonna be created in AWS, on AWS, sorry. Then the handler, this is essentially pointing to, the first part of that is pointing to the file, to the JavaScript file, JS file, right? So handler points to handler.js. If you rename handler.js to something else and you keep it like that, it's not gonna work, right? If you rename that something else, you have to also rename that file to something else, right? To the same thing that you put here. Then hello is the name of the exported function. So if you go and open handler.js, you will see there is module.exports.hello, right? So that points to that hello. That hello needs to match that hello. If you rename that, not gonna work. If you rename that, you also have to rename this one in here, okay? So very important. And then there is, again, something commented out. And part of it is important because there is something we want to use, which is events section on the hello function. So you've got handler hello, and you would like to use events. There's gonna be just a single event, and that event is gonna be called HTTP. This is to create an endpoint behind API gateway. And that HTTP has two properties. I mean, it can have more, but today we're just gonna use two. The first one is path. And that is essentially the endpoint itself, the path to the endpoint itself, right? So if we do hello, we will have something like HTTPS, some unique API gateway URL that is gonna be generated once we deploy the Lambda. We will see that URL. I'm going to show you once I do it. And that endpoint, right? So this is what the hello is about. If I change this to bye, then that endpoint is gonna be bye, okay? That's how this works. That's just the path to the endpoint that's gonna be put at the end of the URL to the API gateway, okay? And the second is a method. Is a HTTP method of that endpoint. I'm going to use get. This is also a default one. So if you don't use it, it's gonna be a get as a default, but you know, just for the sake of visibility, I have added it. Okay, so now we can remove all of the rest because we're not really gonna be talking about, I'm not gonna be talking about those in this video. Cool, okay, so that's what we've got in terms of serverless.yaml file. As you can see, it's pretty straightforward, right? What I've done is to set the region to something else, which wasn't really required, but because I'm based somewhere else, not in the US, I changed that. And the functions, this is where I actually need to do a change. I just added an events section to the handler events property, and under the events we've got HTTP, path hello, and method get. Okay, so that's it from the serverless.yaml file. And now the JavaScript code. So the JavaScript code is essentially just a function, right? Lambda is just a function. That function takes an event. It takes an event, and this is what you're getting from API gateway. Okay, I mean, it really depends what kind of events you're using for your Lambda function, but because this video is about API gateway, and we have HTTP section under the events, that event here, when someone hits the endpoint, right? When the client hits the endpoint, that event here is going to be API gateway event. It's going to contain all the request information. So there's going to be request headers. There's going to be request body, request params, right? Like a query params and things like that are going to be on the events, plus some extra information from API gateway. I will show you in a second. Once we deploy it, I'm going to call that endpoint, and you will see it as a part of the response body. And speaking about the response, this is what you return, right? As simple as that. You have a function, it takes an event that has a request data, and that function is supposed to return something, return an object that is going to be the response, right? So you return something that's going to be processed by API gateway and turned into an actual HTTP response that is going to be sent back to the client, okay? And that is the structure that needs to be sent back. That's the structure that needs to be returned from the function. We have two fields that are required. We've got the status code, that is 200, it's HTTP status code, by the way. 200 is HTTP OK, but you can put something else. You can put 201. You can put error status code if you have like a, if you parse the event and there might be something wrong with the body, you may want to return a status code 400, which is a bad request, right? It's gonna be it's essentially up to developer how that function is gonna be implemented. And then a second member here is a body that has to be a string. And this is what is going to be returned as a response body to the client, right? And what we're returning here is a JSON, stringified JSON, right? Because the requirement for the body is a string, but we want to return a JSON, right? I mean, this is a default example, but I want to do it. So that's why I stringify. And essentially what the client is gonna see is a JSON with the message property, Go serverless v1, your function executed successfully, and the input, which is the event, right? So we will be able to see how the event looks like. There's gonna be the whole big structure, whole big object, right? But stringified JSON event, so we'll be able to see it. But yeah, let me, before I deploy, because we can essentially deploy it like that right now. It's all gonna work. But I would like to be a bit more original. So instead of go serverless, I'm gonna do something like, I'm gonna change the text to hello from Lambda. Okay, you can put whatever you want. It doesn't have to be a hello from Lambda. I'm gonna add another one, another property here, which is going to be status code, same one, 200, just to be able to see like that whatever we put in here is gonna also be included in the response body, and I'm gonna keep the input as it is. Okay, so that's essentially it from the in terms of modification, right, of this Lambda function. And now we're going to deploy it. And to deploy it, I just opened a new terminal in my Visual Studio Code, and I'm gonna type in, because I'm already in this directory, in my Lambda function directory, I'm just gonna type in serverless deploy and press enter. This is gonna take a while because it has to create all the cloud things, like, all the things like CloudFormation stack and so on. But after a few minutes, you should see the output with the URL to API Gateway endpoint. So yeah, let's give it a few minutes and we should see it in a second. I'm gonna show you where this is located in that output that we're going to get. Okay, done. Our function is deployed, and here in the output, under the endpoints section, we've got the URL that we can just follow in the browser. So I'm gonna copy it, and I'm just gonna open my browser and paste that URL, and there we go. This is it. We've got message hello from Lambda, status code, which is 200, that's what I put there, and the input, which is a bit complicated here. There's lots of stuff in the event itself. You see headers, this is coming from the browser. We've got HTTP method, resource path, and all the stuff like all the headers, and request context and all the other information, right? So have a look what is inside. This is essentially the part of the event, and let me actually show you something. So I'm gonna go back to my console, to my command line. I'm just gonna use curl and add my header here, test 1, 2, 3, and I'm gonna paste that URL, and we should see that header here, right? Xtext 1, 2, 3. So that is on the event, right? That is on the event. The event that we put as an input on the response body. That's why I've got it in here. Cool. So this is how you deploy a Lambda function with the serverless framework. Pretty straightforward, right? So now you can play around with this. You can modify the code. You can try to modify serverless YAML if you are brave enough. Maybe just rename the handler, right? Don't forget to rename it in the handler.js. You can change the path or the method to post, for example, and then try with the postman to see if the endpoint is working. Essentially it's up to you what you would like to do. You can also experiment with the event, the data that you getting there once the function is executed. And whenever you change something and you want to deploy your changes, right? You want to deploy it to AWS, you just need to do serverless deploy, and that is gonna do the diff of the changes, and it's just gonna upload the changes that you did either to the infrastructure in the serverless.yaml or in the code in the handler.js. It's also gonna be picked up automatically and deployed for you. Cool. Okay. Yeah, this is it for today. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give me a like and subscribe to stay up to date with my channel and get notified about any update or any new video, any piece of content I create. Thanks again, and see you until next time.